first thank you, Representative Horsford, for once again, yourself and Congressman Jeffers, for organizing the Congressional Black Caucus's special order. You've really shown tremendous leadership and consistency and have been working so hard on behalf not only of your constituents, but for the entire country, and especially for the CBC. Let me just thank, and I want to just say while she's here, our phenomenal chair, Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, for her leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus. As we celebrate women's history and trailblazing women, we celebrate them for their courage, character, and commitment. That's our 2014 Women's History Month theme. So proud that we have a chairwoman who exhibits all three of these characteristics, and thank you for standing strong and for leading the Congressional Black Caucus on so many fronts. Thank you and congratulations. Let me just say that I agree with Congressman Horsford when you say each month, each day, really, we should always celebrate women's history. It's though in March when we, again, take a moment to recognize really the triumphs of women throughout the course of history and to mark how far we've come, but also to recognize that there is much work to be done. Now, let me just start by mentioning my phenomenal and beautiful 89-year-old mother, Mildred Massey, who, of course, is my role model. She raised 3 girls in segregated El Paso, Texas, until desegregation, and at one point worked 3 jobs to help take care of her family. We lived in a multi-generational household, and until his death, was her father, W.C. Parrish, my grandfather's primary caregiver, while working and taking care of her girls. She taught me at an early age that girls and women are born equal to boys and men, and to never forget that, and to always fight for equality and justice. That was a given in our household. And so I would not be where I am had it not been for my mother, and also for many incredible fighters like my mother that came before myself in the public arena. And I'd like to take a moment to honor 3 women, in addition to my mother in particular, whose shoulders we stand on: Bessie Coleman, Dr. Dorothy Height, and of course Shirley Chisholm. Bessie Coleman, as she was quoted as saying, she refused to take no for an answer. Although she dreamed of becoming a pilot, no flight school in the United States would accept her simply because she was a woman, because she was black. So she refused to take no for an answer. She enrolled in flight school in France and became the only woman and the only person of color in her class in Paris. She soon became the first African-American woman pilot and the first American of any race to hold an international pilot's license. Now, several weeks ago, a portion of the airport drive at the Oakland International Airport in my district was renamed the Bessie Coleman Drive. It was such an inspiration to be part of this dedication ceremony because she, of course, was from or worked in Oakland and really went to many of her classes and learned a lot about piloting in Oakland, California. Another great woman who refused to take no for an answer was our beloved, the great Dr. Dorothy Height. And let me just say how fortuitous it is that today is Dr. Height's birthday. She was a bold and brilliant African-American woman who blazed many trails and opened many doors to the American dream for women and people of color. From her stewardship as the national president of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, which I know Congresswoman, our chair, Marcia Fudge, and Congresswoman Joyce Beatty are members of, proud members. Dorothy Height led the National Council also of Negro Women for, 41 years? 41 years. And more than 60 years at the YWCA, which she was actually responsible for desegregating. She dedicated her life to achieving racial equality and securing women's rights. Dr. Height was especially committed to empowering women and girls and worked to ensure that black women's issues were equally addressed. She was also dedicated to helping women work towards full employment, pay, and education. And I remember when Dr. Height turned, I believe, years old, members of the Congressional Black Caucus, we honored her here on Capitol Hill with a luncheon, and she really gave us more background and knowledge and information during that luncheon as to how those following behind her needed to really focus on the fact that, yes, when women succeed, America succeeds. And Dorothy Height was a true leader for all women, not only in our own country, but throughout the world. Now, in the 70s, Women's History Month was a little more than an idea. As this idea was taking formation, Shirley Chisholm, a founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus, had only recently made history by becoming the first African-American woman elected to Congress. Now, I was a student at Mills College in the early 70s when Mrs. Chisholm again made history by becoming the first African-American woman and the first African-American to run for the Democratic presidential nomination. Although she did not win the nomination, her campaign inspired thousands, myself included, to use their voices and to speak up through the ballot box. And she blazed a trail for, of course, our nation's first great president, President Barack Obama. Throughout her congressional career, the unbought and unbossed Mrs. Chisholm continued her fight against discrimination in all forms and championed issues for women and their families. She was a strong voice for domestic workers and led the fight to give them the right to a minimum wage. This was way back in the day. Still struggling and fighting for many of those issues. Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm was instrumental, along with the first Asian Pacific American, our beloved Congresswoman Patsy Mink, in passing Title IX, which prohibits discrimination in the funding of education programs. She was a fierce advocate for the Affordable Child Care Act. There's no doubt that the 16 African-American women in Congress today are truly standing on the strong shoulders of Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. I'm pleased that we were finally, after years of trying, able to secure a postage stamp in her honor. Just last month, I was joined by Leader Pelosi in my district for the West Coast unveiling of the United States Postal Service's Black Heritage Stamp as a small token of our thanks, and Congressman Jeffries, Clark, and Rangel had the privilege to unveil the beautiful stamp in Shirley Chisholm's former district in Brooklyn, New York. So 101 years after women marched in Washington, D.C. for the right to vote, women are still fighting to break down barriers. It's really a disgrace that in 2014, despite making up 50% of our workforce, women still make 77 cents for every dollar a man makes on average. Even worse, African-American women are making only 64 cents and Latinas only 55 cents of every dollar a white man makes. So the point is, working women are paid less than the same work as men. This is wrong and it's discriminatory. What's more, child care remains unaffordable. Quality, affordable education remains out of the reach of far too many women, and pregnancy discrimination continues. Again, simply unacceptable. That's why the Democratic women of the House, including the women of the CBC, under the leadership of Nancy Pelosi and Donna Edwards, Doris Matsui, and Rosa DeLauro, have launched When Women Succeed, America Succeeds, and are championing an economic agenda for women and families, one which our president supports. Finally, let me just quote from my dear friend, our beloved Shirley Chisholm. She once said, "I want to be remembered as a woman who dared to be a catalyst for change." There's no doubt that she was. As we honor heroines like my mother, Shirley Chisholm, Dorothy Height, Bessie Coleman, and so many others, so many in our districts who fight each and every day with little resources to make our communities better, let us remember that, yes, when women succeed, America succeeds. But also, as I said at the United Nations very recently at the Commission on the Status of Women, when women succeed, the world becomes a more just and a more equitable place. Thank you again, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you to the gentlelady from California. Thank you for that great historical overview and perspective.